Assalamu alaikum. We're going to get started just in a minute. People want to take a few seconds and just introduce yourselves to the people sitting around you. Maybe share some names, how your day was going today, and we'll get going just in a bit, inshallah. I'm John.
How are you?
What's up, man?
Can I borrow your bag for a minute?
Yeah. There's already a bag in there, like
Okay.
an envelope. So just keep the two things separate.
Okay.
Somebody gave that to me too.
Sorry.
Be cold.
So this was something that just was separate. I guess not separate, but it is not in the envelopes. Just came in after they'd sealed the envelopes.
Okay. I'm live on this thing. Sorry. Yeah. Okay, should we get started? Bismillah, Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barak wasallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So last week we started our discussion of verse number 3 of Surah Al-Mu'minoon. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ. Those who avoid that which is lahu. And to have a recap of some of what we discussed last week, we said lahu was essentially that thing that had no benefit to it. It was futile. It served no real purpose. I put back in the chat some of the. Sorry, someone's asking me for the link. Some of the definitions that we get from the Salaf on what lahu is. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh, he says that lahu is falsehood and anything in which there is no good. Mujahid rahimahullah, he says that lahu is that for which a person receives no reward and from which there is no benefit. Al-Hasan al-Basri rahimahullah, he says that every vain and false, useless speech, that's lahu. Qatada rahimahullah says that lahu is falsehood and forbidden speech. He also says that every falsehood and useless talk. Ibrahim al-Nakhai, he says that everything in speech from which no benefit is gained. Sa'id ibn Jubair says that it is false speech. And Al-Zuhri says that it is speech that contains no benefit. Just to kind of get us in a frame of what we're discussing tonight. And the avoidance of this, why that becomes an imperative, especially as we're prefacing this within the verses of Surah Al-Mu'minoon that we've been looking at, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ, that the believers have succeeded, they have falah. We said ultimate falah is Jannah. May Allah make us people of Jannah. الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ, those who in their salah they have khushu'. We talked about the importance of the internal focus and reverent awe of the divine being a first attribute, something that caused you to look inward. And now lahu is about how we relate to the world outside of us. If you remember last week, we talked about different things that were mentioned are not lahu. Ata ibn Abi Rabah cited the companions as denoting some of these things, specifically spending time with one's family, running between two lines, taking care of one's steed, swimming, and we kind of broke that down in different ways. So today we want to think about this in some other nuances, because this is going to really be what changes a lot of how we experience the world. And there's going to be a few different buckets that I want us to touch on today in order for us to understand the intrinsic relationship between khushu' and lahu, and how we can find a link that has our experience in traversing this world to be categorically different if we're able to actually implement some of what this verse is telling us to do. And it's not just about separate understandings of the verses, but how they synergize together. I want us to look at some of the verses I've put here in the workbook that talk about Quranically lahu in particular ways. So the first one, if we look at Surah Al-Furqan, it's 72nd verse. If people want to open 2572, Surah Furqan, it's 72nd verse. Does anybody have it? 2572. Do you want to read it? You're nodding your head. Would you like to read? Go ahead. Great. Can somebody read the Arabic? 2572. Yeah, go ahead. Great. You see the word lahu here, right? The Ibad ar-Rahman are the ones that we are engaging in depictions of. These are people who they don't give false testimony. You see the link that was coming from the definitions of the Salaf that we looked at, right? Lying is lahu, essentially one of the definitions they're offering to us. And when they see something frivolous, they pass by it with dignity. So, an understanding here of characteristically that you are going to approach something that can tangibly be associated with futility. And it's giving us an indication of how it is that somebody ethically engages with something that has no purpose to it, no benefit, no meaning. The Quran is giving us this indication that it's something that you move away from. This verse, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ, when you talk about the avoidance here, that is coming from this etymological root, right? We talked about ilm al-ishtiqaq, the etymology of these words, right? Arada is giving us an insight here with an attached to it that you're turning away from something, but it has an active mode of turning away. With intentionality, you are consciously saying, this is not something that I need to be engaging in this moment. It's not saying that you approach it with condescension or arrogance or you make somebody feel terrible, but you are doing this with an air of dignity that understands the mutuality of dignity and that I don't have to debase myself by succumbing to something that has no benefit to it. Does that make sense? Characteristically, it though plays a role that requires one to be able to avoid something, you have to see it first, right? And then when it comes upon you, you avoid it with intention, with purpose. In Arabic, the difference between an amal and a fa'il, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, that indeed actions are by intentions, is that the amal has consciousness to it. It has presence to it. The fa'il is something that's done unconsciously. So I can be in a place where, alhamdulillah, there's a rahmah to me not having to think about every single thing that I do. Can you imagine if you had to think about every breath you breathe? Now I'm breathing, now I'm breathing, now I'm breathing. If you had to think every time you blinked your eye, now I'm going to blink, now I'm going to blink, you wouldn't be able to function. You just have to keep on top of these two things actively. This is from Allah's rahmah that it just happens within us innately. You can actually meet people who can't breathe on their own. May Allah make it easy and give them shifa. Do you know? But that conscious mode exerted in an action is what gives it the characteristic of being an amal. You can fall into something that is futile instinctively. You remember what we said last week? What is the relationship between the haram acts that Allah mentions in the Quran? Zina, right? Intoxication, gambling, and even laghu. We said that these are all things that you can habituate behavior around. They can become addictive. Modernity shows us that laghu is something that can also become addictive, and you can have a habit built around it. You see what I mean? And if it becomes habituated, my constant scrolling, my constant engagement of what it is that's just killing time, I have to be very purposeful in bringing awareness to seeing it and then avoiding it with intention. Does that make sense? Let's look at the next verse that is in the book. We're going to look at Surah Al-Qasas. It's 55th verse, 28:55. Can people open that one up? Are people okay temperature-wise right now? Too cold? Yeah. Okay, we'll turn it up a bit. Saki, can you do me a favor? Can you put the temperature to 72? Huh? Sorry, guys. Surah Al-Qasas is the 28th chapter. It's 55th verse. Can somebody read it? Hey, could you do the other two also when you get a chance, Sakib? Sorry about that. The ones on that one. Yeah, thanks, man. 28:55. Yeah, go ahead. Can you read it from the Musaf, the full verse? 28:55. You have it? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go for it.
وإذا سمعوا التكبير أنكروا وقالوا لنا آمنوا ولكم أعمالكم سلام عليكم لا نبتغي الجاه.
Can somebody read the English? Yeah, go for it.
When they hear slanderers talk, they turn away from it, saying, "We are accountable for our deeds, and you for yours. Peace is our only response to you. We want nothing to do with those who act ignorantly."
Yeah. And so the ethic here is being able to think out that you can very consciously approach with intention and avoidance, but a capacity to reclaim presence is by a self-talk that not only is this speaking to the other, but you're speaking to yourself. This isn't something that I need. This isn't something that's going to bear impact on me in a meaningful, positive way. I have to be able to sometimes disrupt what becomes habituated and what has futility to it by reminding myself with presence to be able to say, I have my deeds. I have my actions. There are a'mal that are being written down right now. I don't have to believe it for it to be true. But if you remember the very first day we got together, we talked about the gatherings where the Quran is recited and studied with mutual kind of engagement. We talked about the unique barakas that come down. And then inshallah, this is a gathering that angels come and you bring your own angels with you that are recording on your shoulders. What are they writing down? They're writing down your actions. The reminder that I have my own acts. You can't do for me what it is that I do for me. I have to do for me what I do for me. Why am I using my time in the doing of these things? What is it that is fundamentally yielding for me? And one of the best ways to be able to reclaim consciousness, you can't, in a conscious mode, deal with habits directly, but you can consciously build new habits and break down old ones. The unconscious exertion requires sometimes the interjection of presence that then builds a micro habit that says, hold on, like this is lahu. Does that make sense? Like it doesn't serve a purpose to it. I want us to look at one of the things that I shared with you all last week. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the relationship between, actually, let's do this first, because now there's more people here. The verse that precedes this, الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ, They are those who in their salah they have khushu', right? May Allah make us from amongst them. I want you to turn to the persons next to you. How does that verse, after sitting with it now for a week, and this verse have a connection point to it? And I want you to think about what focus means. Khashya from the standpoint of submissiveness, humility, a reverent awe of the divine. You're standing in front of God in prayer. And what does it mean to deal with distractions in a worldly sense? How is there a relationship between these two particular things? The khushu' in the second verse and the lahu in the third verse. Focus and distraction, what can we understand is the connection point between these two things for us as individual practitioners of this faith trying to build a relationship with God? Does that make sense? Yeah? Because I don't want you to walk out of here thinking that lahu is only. It is also things like devices that have habituated mindlessness, but there's other stuff that gets into it as well. And if we can understand at a base level what's happening and why that's happening strategically against us, it'll help us to catch more sight of it. So step number one is going to be able to understand the relationship between focus and distraction by defining what focus and distraction are and what do they fundamentally yield within you. Does that make sense? And think about distraction in different modes. Like what captivates your attention? You know, like the brother was saying, you start to pray, thoughts come into your head. Well, what do the thoughts tell you about you and what are they seeking to do if you were to create categories around them? So let's just for a few minutes, turn to the persons next to you, exchange names. How do we understand focus and distraction separately? And where do we see the ways that these two verses play a role in khushu' being an integral variable in dealing with distraction? Does the question make sense? Yeah? Let's talk about it for a bit and then we'll come back and discuss. Go ahead. If you don't know names, exchange names, and then we'll keep going.
I got these dates for somebody, my friend's husband in the hospital. They don't need dates, so I'd like to give them here if anybody's fasting.
Yeah.
I can just.
I'm fasting. I'd love to have them.
Okay.
Thank
you want
you.
me to like open it? And then I don't want
No,
to
we can at Maghrib time share it with people.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Thank
That's
you.
what I love.
Yeah, is that okay?
No, I was about to answer
Okay, what are we talking about? Like, how do we start to understand our relationship with these things? Focus, khushua, its relationship to distraction. What is distraction doing to our ability to have that presence? How does our presence combat distraction? What are you discussing? Why don't you take this one? Thanks, man.
I can start. Taha was talking about how right before we go into Salah, like that's our moment where we actually decompress and we have a moment to think about all the things that we've just done in our day. And that's usually where all the ideas and the thoughts and everything starts to come rushing in, because it's a moment of actual silence where we're not scrolling on our phone or not doom scrolling or doing anything like that. And we talked about how when it comes to, if you're studying so constantly for like a few hours at a time, and then you need to take a break or decompress, and you go start scrolling on your phone, you actually are continuously overloading your brain. So when you're taking a break, you should actually just really do nothing. And that act of doing nothing is an active, how did you say it? An active break. It's an active break, just sitting there and doing nothing. So taking that moment, what I took away from our conversation was before Salah, I want to start to try to think like, just really don't take like a few minutes, don't do anything, let the thoughts come through, and then that can inshallah help with focus during Salah.
Okay. What's the purpose of having, like, if you have khushua in prayer, is that a good thing or a bad thing? It's a bad thing? Yeah, it's a good thing. But what does that feel like? What does it feel like? It feels like being grounded? Great, that's a great word, right? We want more Muslims who are grounded. What does it mean to be grounded? It means to be still, right? You can't find peace by chasing distractions. Does that make sense? our tradition claims that in the remembrance of Allah, hearts find rest. May Allah grant us hearts that are in a state of rest. This is why khushu' in prayer is the quality that the first set of depictions is offering to us, because it helps us to understand a very particular thing. You live in a world that is constantly telling you to look outward, and our religion is telling us first look inward. And you can think about distractions as a phone. I want you to think about when you're looking outward and not inward, what are you then looking at outward that is a distraction? How does this world preoccupy your time by grasping your attention outwardly? Nobody is really walking on the street. I can see everyone walking on the street right now. The majority of people, alhamdulillah, on bikes, messengers, that guy's got a sandwich and a coffee in his hand. Those three guys are talking to each other. One's got a book. This woman is pushing a baby in a stroller. None of them are looking at a phone. What does that world seek to instill within them that distracts them from looking at themselves inwardly? If you're not looking at yourself inwardly, what are you likely looking at? Huh? Worry? Yeah, worry about what? Good. Other stuff? What else do you look at? Like, what am I looking at right now? I'm looking at you, and you're looking at me, right? When I'm walking on the street, and everything is about outward attention first, not inward attention first. I don't know how to look at myself inwardly, right? وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. Then it becomes harder to avoid the outward when the outward is the only, not a part of, but the only focus. What they're trying to do in a prism of distraction is utilize comparison in a way that has your mind preoccupied. When you are praying your prayer, is your khushu' in comparison to somebody else's? That's not how Allah assesses, we're taught. He sees you. He sees your heart, your actions. You're assessed by what you do, not what I do. But at every juncture in life, I'm in a constant mode of unhealthy comparison. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ. Even on the devices that I'm stuck at, nobody's posting their pain. They're in a place where constantly what they're sharing is curated that feeds into inferiority and superiority modes of self-reflection that are delusional senses of self-reflection. A crux of why I turn to a device to quiet thoughts in my head is because at some level, I don't know how to silence the comparative mode that the world has me seeing myself through constantly. Somebody else is always more beautiful. Somebody else is always more this or more that. I'm always something that's lesser, inadequate. And it creates now a different mode of intention that I'm trying to please a standard of God's creation instead of pleasing God. And the majority of what distracts me is about this type of agitation. Does it feel good when you're constantly seeing yourself for what you are not? Versus when you stand in front of the one who looks to catch you in a moment of mercy. Allah does not tell you that you individually cannot make dua to him. You choose not to make dua to Allah. There's some people who tell you, you are not good enough to talk to me. You are not this enough, you are not that enough. Comparison, comparison, comparison. The comparative mode is what we talked about at Jummah last Friday.
when Iblis in Surah Al-A'raf is speaking about why he does not prostrate to Adam. How many of you were here on Friday at Jummah and remember anything of what we're talking about? Anybody was paying attention? Ana khayrum minhu, that I am better than him. The comparative mode rooted in something materialistic and tangible. I am of fire, he is of earth. It is embedded in what Shaitan does in that Adamic narrative of creation, comparison. If you walk into the masjid and the first thing you see is why somebody is not the way that you think they should be, the whole idea of inner contentment is not necessarily about controlling what you see, but how you see things. This is what we're seeing in Surah Al-Qasas, in Surah Al-Furqan. How can you avoid the lahu if you don't even see it in the first place? And the basira that has clarity to it, that has no obstacle in front of you, necessitates being able to understand a starting point that starts from within. Do you get what I mean? Nobody finds peace by chasing after distraction. And if you feel overwhelmed, you feel tired and exhausted and stressed constantly, it might be because the distractions are doing exactly what they intended to do. I spoke at a church yesterday, St. John of the Divine, and my co-panelists were the head reverend of that church and the outgoing president of Union Theological Seminary. And the woman who's the Reverend Winnie of the church, she told a story of how she's in the UK as a South Asian Indian woman, and she's in a white nationalist rally, close proximity. And she said, there is a South Asian man from the Sikh community wearing a turban, brown as anything, standing in the middle, rallying with these people who are rallying about why people like him should not be there. And she's like, oh, what is going on? And as we're dissecting how it's possible that this man's dissonance gets him to a place that whiteness is doing to him exactly what it intends to do. Internalize racism and self-loathing in such a way that your validation is subservient to the systems that literally he is rallying with people who are saying that he shouldn't even be standing where he is. You think he's going to find peace by chasing this distraction? And embedded at every level of society are things that are not just distracting you from simplistic reductive understandings, but very deeply and strategically at a multitude of levels are telling you why you should not go to the masjid to pray. And the output is what it is. I can stand in front of the one who sees me as who I am, or I can be amongst his creation who purposely have me scattered constantly and unable to focus. If you see everything always, all the time, then you don't really see anything. How can you have falah, which we are talking about as Quranic success, an objective that you want to obtain? Realistically, think about this. If you were to think about all of your decisions today, every single word you put into existence, not because perfection is what we pursue, but just thinking about embedded in objective that is rooted in focus, how many things today did you do with the mindset saying that this could potentially be something that gets me into Jannah? And how many things were you doing that have nothing to do with Jannah, or arguably could be accountable for keeping you out of Jannah? May Allah make us people of Jannah, right? If you're in a place where you are thinking that everything begins with the outward, it begins with talent, it begins with luck, it begins with motivation, that's not where things start. Things start with focus, khushu', a reverent awe of the divine that starts and builds itself in prayer and then enables you to be able to get to a place where you say, this thing in front of me, this is lahu, futility, frivolous. I can't find peace by chasing after distraction. And I don't want to have khushu' in prayer because I'm trying to prove to the person next to me that my tears are somehow like indicative of something. Who cares what the guy next to you thinks, man? Who fundamentally cares? You're going to get out of it what you put into it. And that first bucket of focus is constantly disrupted by a society that makes us as minorities exist in this comparative mode from the minute that we wake up. If you can learn to silence that, it's going to silence the thoughts that create distractions and preoccupy most of your time. Why do you dress the way that you dress? Why do you eat the way that you eat? Why do you engage in the majority of what you engage in time again? Nobody can achieve success in pursuit of things if they're doing a million different things. And when you interject that comparative mode, it might not come from you. You could have a belligerent parent. Don't you want to get married? Those girls got married. Maybe you should lose some weight. Maybe your skin is too dark. Why don't you use this skin whitening cream? Why aren't you married? Why don't you become a doctor? That guy's son is a doctor. Everything. Comparison. Our tradition doesn't work that way. We don't have collective journeys. We are individually traveling to Allah, but Sirat al-Mustaqim is a vast pathway. We're all walking together, inshallah. How do I start to solve for a comparative mode of vision? Because if I'm looking outward and I'm looking constantly outward and I'm comparing outwardly, it's taking away from my ability to look inwardly. So what do I need to do to realign a focus that starts inward that then enables me to seek peace that cannot come from seeking distraction? Does that make sense? Yeah. I know I just said a lot of things, and I know sometimes I speak very abstractly, right? So I want to take a pause. Let's turn to the persons next to us. What's coming up from the things that I'm speaking about right now? What is it making you think about? Let's discuss it for a little bit with the persons next to us, and then we'll come back and talk it out, and then we'll move forward. Go ahead.
Okay, what are we thinking about so far? What is this making us? What's bringing it up? Can we hear from a couple of people? What happened? Nice. What do we discuss? We can hear from a few people.
We were talking about khushu', and we're talking about how to gain that flow. And one of the points that I came up with is that I think there's a difference, or there's a nuance between like presence of the mind and then presence of the heart. And so presence of the mind would be like tarkeez, like focus, right? And that's in relation to whatever is stored in our subconscious brain of whatever we do, like doom scrolling and things of that sort. But then khushu' would be like the state of the heart, and the heart would be like and it's affected by whatever sins, whether we were sins or good deeds or things of that sort. And so we took a different angle, and we thought that, or we came to the conclusion of that we would need to look at the state of the heart and see what are some things we can improve, like whether it's doing more istighfar or obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more, just so that we could get that level of khushu'. So like
Amazing.
reading the state of the heart and
But you have to look inward to do that,
yeah.
right? You can't find that by looking outward. You have to look inward. Do you know what I mean? If you can't be with yourself, it's going to be hard to be with yourself. Do you know? What else did we discuss? Yeah, you want to pass this way?
Yeah, David and I were talking about how when we have two different types of days, and we all have productive and unproductive days. And ironically, when we have an unproductive day, we're going through the motions, we're not following what we decided we wanted to achieve for that day. At the end of the day, we feel awful. Our soul just feels weird, you know? I woke up, I didn't cook like I was supposed to, I didn't do my prayers, I skipped my reading, I didn't sign up for what I wanted to achieve for the day. And coincidentally, at the end of the day, we don't feel good. Versus the latter, when we have a day where we're taking care of ourselves, we're fulfilling all of our obligations, at the end of the day, our soul feels good and we feel refreshed. So I was making the comment to say that when our day is full of good energy and full of balance and doing a lot of activities, you actually paradoxically feel better. And I made the analogy of if you wake up and you run in the morning, you have better flow of energy throughout the day. You know, you're doing more physical activity versus just sitting down on the couch. It's exhausting. So,
but what we're saying here, and I would nuance this a bit, right? For us, it's not about doing more, but about doing what matters, right? And getting to a place of understanding that what you're saying, I come home at the end of the night, I didn't pray my prayers, I didn't go for a run. What I would argue, if you're looking inwardly, why you feel down is because you broke promises to yourself. You see? Like when somebody says that I have reliance on you, you know, we're going to meet up at a certain time, and then I don't show up for you, you get upset with me, rightfully so, right? Now you're getting upset with you inwardly because you made a commitment to yourself that you dishonored. Everything is about looking inward. If the output is the goal, this is part of the challenge, right? If I am looking at someone else's journey only and constantly, I've taken my eyes off of my path. How can I find myself traversing my path if I am constantly absorbed and consumed by someone else's? Envy, may Allah protect us from it. Jealousy, may Allah protect us from it. There's a wisdom that these things are mentioned in the shorter surahs at the end of the Mus'haf that some of us have memorized. All of it is rooted in comparison. Clarity is built on stillness. Comparison is built on chaos. And if people like us are in a state of chaos and exhausted, and we're in these places, who benefits? Not minorities, man. Who wants you to be tired all the time? Who wants you to be exhausted all the time? Who wants you to get to a place where you can't physically move and you're too exhausted to pray, and then you hate on yourself for breaking a promise to yourself, and then it just perpetuates the cycle. You just stop looking outward for a moment and looking all around and just look inside. That's why there's a deep wisdom that verse number 2 and verse number 3 cannot be seen separated to get to the depth of its meaning. And that the khushu' that Allah chose to talk about could be at a very broad level. Have taqwa of the divine wherever you are. It's what the Prophet tells Mu'adh radiallahu anhu. But he's telling us it starts in prayer. So you got to pray your prayers, not because you're trying to prove to the world you're something great. You're all grown people. I don't know what you're doing at Fajr time. But you can't find peace by chasing distraction. You know it's true. And if you're letting go of the oases that create now that opportunity for replenishment, at the end of the day, you're going to be hard on yourself in a way that's more negative than something that's encouraging and motivating. Today, I only was able to get through a quarter of a mile, but I got to do a quarter before I could do a full mile is very different than for a month I sit and I tell myself as I eat my way into numbing pain that I am hurting because I'm breaking promises to me. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any thoughts from over here? Yeah, go ahead. Can you guys pass the mic down?
The distractions are not always like bad things necessarily. They can also just be like responsibilities that we have in our lives, like household responsibilities, cleaning, family responsibilities. And I think something that was coming to mind is Surah Asr, which talks about indeed humans are in loss in terms of time, except those who do good deeds and have faith. And there's more to that surah. But something I've been noticing is that like when we prioritize Salah, and also Sunnah and Nafil things in our lives, then there's an expansion in our time. And so those things that feel like never-ending to-do lists become easier to do. And time is not a 24 hours for everybody. Allah can give more barakah and expand our time and constrict our time depending on how we use it. So yeah, I think just like that additional understanding of distractions are not necessarily bad things, but they're just like things that we need to also take care of, but how Allah can help us do that when we're focused and looking for falah, success.
Amazing. Jazakallah khair. May Allah make us from the successful. I want you to think about the nature of distraction, of lahu, right? Barakah is important, the ability to do more with less. But what are you giving up in the process through comparison, through competition that's very different? Like I'm either choosing actions that are helping me to become who I can be, or I'm competing. You can't do both. You can't become and compete at the same time. What you're giving up in these moments, and why then things feel heavy, is because everything requires energy. If you were to understand yourself in your entirety, all of you connected to the rest of you, so you have an emotional, physical, spiritual, and mental sphere. The utilization of strength does not render weakness, but if you don't have mechanisms to replenish after you've expended energy, you're just going to be tired. Then the easier things to do are give in to the things that are just distractive because you're exhausted. This is just who I am. I can't change. No, that mindset is contrary to the mindset of the believer. May Allah make us from the strongest of the believers. So you want to be able to start thinking about what it is that people are seeking to take from you. And most of what it is that they're seeking to take from you is your energy. Why does the hadith tell us to think about certain things while we have them? Your youth, your health, your energy. People are trying to deplete you and they have demands on your time in ways that, this is what we said last week or 2 weeks ago, if you don't design your life, someone else will design it for you. And you want to start thinking about how it is that you start to then, with a deep sense of self-awareness, because you're not the other people around you. What makes me tired does not make you tired. You don't have to sleep as much as I sleep. I just have to know how much sleep I need. You don't have to sleep the way I sleep because we're not the same person. If Allah wanted you to be me, He would have made you me, but He made you you, so just be you. When you're constantly looking outward, you're losing the ability of self-actualization. That's not difficult. You just don't pay attention to yourself. And then you're not investing energy, you're wasting it. You're wasting it as if it's something that you just have an infinite amount of. And then basic things feel terrible.
Everything creates irritation and frustration and grief and anxiety and overwhelmingness. The dishes just pile up and pile up and pile up. The bed is not made. The laundry is not done. Do you know? As opposed to getting to a place where I have an objective at the end of all of it. Do you believe in a God that wants you to hate yourself? Or do you believe in a God that wants you to have a healthy love for yourself? And are the things that you're chasing after giving you what exactly? So when you ponder and reflect on the nature of distraction, because it's an habituated act, we said, the Muharram have this nature. Zina, gambling, intoxicants, substance, all of this stuff, lahu, it can all be addictive. What is it seeking to do? It's seeking to take your time and it's seeking to take your energy. So that you are so worn down, waswasa just knocks you over again and again and again. Are you investing your energy or are you wasting it? When you're tired, are you replenishing in a way that makes sense? Distractions are easier to fall into when you're exhausted. I've been serving this community, alhamdulillah, since 2005. I don't like making generalizations. I sit with a lot of people one-on-one. And one thing I've learned is that people are very different from one another. Two questions that I ask people all the time that I get the answer of I don't know to. One, how do you take care of your heart? When they're very vulnerable and real, I don't know. And two, what are your values? Not aspirationally. I don't know. And the questions are linked because if you don't know what your values are, then you're not going to necessarily also prioritize your heart as a value or your spirit as a value. And then when you're thinking about everything, and the world has now created devices that can have all kinds of stimuli going into your head, at times you're supposed to wind down. Your rest isn't even restful. What is it trying to do? It's trying to take your energy so that you succumb to distractions more and the whispers are easier. أنا خير منه. I'm better than him. You don't want to give it up that easily. It is not a waste of time to take care of your heart. You cannot take care of other hearts if you do not take care of your own, and your heart is important enough to take care of by itself. A third part to distraction that I can tell you is very important to understand, that is going to bleed into the next characteristic that we talk about, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ, those who are the doers of zakah, that we'll talk about probably next week, a little quicker. This is a Meccan surah. The rules of zakah, like formally as a practice, have not been revealed yet at this time. The tadarruj that is rooted in zakatul fitr, and then zakah in a certain manner, and then towards the end of the Medanese experience, the categories of zakah being revealed, that happens much later. But on the other end of it, what the lahu is sandwiched in is that you are the doer of zakah in a mode that you are now purifying your inner self. A generalization I'm comfortable making that is going to be applicable to most of you in this room, that you wrestle with in terms of distraction, revolves around forgiveness. You hold a lot inside of you that distracts your thoughts because you are giving permission to people to still have control over you that did not do right by you. And I'm sorry they didn't. Forgiveness is not for the one being forgiven in our tradition. Forgiveness is for the forgiver. It is not your responsibility, it is your right. A process to end indignation, bitterness, resentment takes you from a place of anger to a place of calm, a place of agitation to a place of tranquility, a place of angst to a place of stillness. It's the same person at both ends of the bridge. That's you. The toxicity that comes into play when we are now in a place where all of these things start to converge on one another, the weakening of the heart that succumbs to the haram, it does things to your inner self. There's nothing you can do about it. You make tawbah to clean it, but when you engage in the haram, it creates agitation inwardly. Don't lie. Don't gossip. Don't backbite. You're killing your heart. You know why Hassan al-Basri rahimahullah did not care about people who gossiped about him? Someone accuses him about backbiting. He says, who are you that I would give you the benefit of my good deeds on the day of judgment? He finds out someone is gossiping of him. He sends that man a gift with a note in it. Thank you for the benefit of your good deeds. I will enjoy them on the day of judgment. He is centered in a sense of self-awareness that his existence is not now brought down just because people are talking about him. He doesn't live in pursuit of people's validation. Rahmallah. You can get to that place, but you have to work on the inward first. When you're in a place where you're holding pain, you're holding discomfort, irreconciled emotions, you have people that were in your life years ago, but they still define how you choose your choices today. There are things that then hold us back. Forgiveness becomes a necessary tool for your heart to let go of the things that distract. On average, we think 12,000 to 70,000 thoughts a day. 4 out of 5 thoughts are negative in their base. 96% of thoughts are repeat, automated. That means 4% of 70,000 thoughts that we think in a day are just on autopilot, again and again and again. In our tradition, you have Rabbani thoughts, Malakani thoughts, Nafsani thoughts, and Shaitani thoughts. Rabbani and Malakani will incline you towards things that are positive and they have beauty to them. Nafsani thoughts are going to come from the lower self. These are going to be the things that say, don't pray your sunnahs. It's only sunnah. The shaitani thoughts are going to tell you to just engage in haram. Just don't pray at all. Objectively, this is how it functions. The negative cognitive bias that we have, it is something that you can disrupt. But now when you have comparison, hasad, in your heart, now when you're in a place where you have insecurity, inadequacy, this is what Iblis wants. I'm of fire, he is of clay, I am better. He wants you to think that you are insignificant. And then you have pain and you don't know how to forgive. A heart has capacity. If it's full, you cannot put something in something that's full. Why is it also important to understand? Stop putting crap in other people's hearts. You have no right to speak about somebody words that you were not given permission to. It is not for you to assess and judge through your own insecurity and make someone feel less than. It stays with people. And then it has us in a place where we retreat to distractions because I don't know how to be with me. I don't know how to deal with all the things that I am holding. Do you see what I mean? And Allah is telling you, nobody else is going to talk to you. Come talk to me 5 times a day. Put into your dua, put into your prostrations a recognition that your presence can be a part of those things. It's okay if Allah wants to see the person next to you at Fajr. He wants to see you at Fajr too. Stop telling yourself that somebody else is the one that's supposed to be there. You are entitled to peace also. You can't find peace by chasing after distraction. When you start to value your energy and you stop spending it on seeking the validation, giving second chances to people who didn't deserve a first, you give yourself permission to forgive, not burdensome obligation, so you let go of the toxicity that's within you. You're in a place now where when you can't control how other people behave, you can control what you absorb. Does that make sense? Al-maru ala dini khalili falyandur ahadukum man yukhalid. An individual is on the deen of their friends, so be smart about the ones that you befriend. Who are you keeping the company of? This is really important to understand. Everybody doesn't deserve access to you, man. They don't. And when you start to focus on yourself, a part of that journey might require you to be alone for a little bit. And that's okay. In solitude, more often than not, clarity is birthed. But if you're already anti-solitude because you don't know how to just be with you, it's going to make the process that much more difficult. I have to love myself enough to know that I don't need to waste my energy on this kind of stuff. I can have nice things too. I can build relationships with people who don't need me to be their friend only because we talk poorly about other people. You deserve better than that. I can build relationships with my own heart, and I can acknowledge the sadness. I can acknowledge the pain when elders fail, when friends fail, when communities fail. The whole goal is to not let the sadness become non-existent. You're human. But you control how you respond to it, how it knocks you down, how you bring yourself back up, and then what goes into choices. Alhamdulillah. Isn't it hard, man, to live a life where you're just waiting for an apology that's just not going to come? Right? What are you going to do? You can sit there every single day and hope that somebody is different. Or you can think that I only have control over me. And it'd be nice, but my existence is not contingent on what it is that they're offering to me in that way. Does that make sense? I want us to look at this in a different mode now a little bit. I'm going to put in the WhatsApp group a commencement speech. Some of you have likely heard it before. Some of you have never heard it in your life. Where is our WhatsApp group? This is a link to the transcript and the audio files of a commencement speech that was given in 2005 by a man by the name of David Foster Wallace. It frames itself around an anecdote of 3 fish that are in a bowl. One fish swims past 2 fish and says to the fish that it passes by, "How's the water?" And then when it goes away, the fish in the pair speak to each other, and one says to the other, "What's water?" Part of the premise of what he says here is that everybody thinks, but we want to reclaim our ability to choose what we think about and how we think about the things that we think about. Does that make sense? We're going to read this all together. Because if I tell you to go home and read it, most of you are not going to read it. I don't know why. The first command that came down was read. Most of you know that, if not all of you. Iqra, read. Like pick up a book and read it once in a while. Get some friends together and read it. Come and sit here in this nice large space Allah's blessed us with and just read together. And reading a book is different from reading 10-second captions on something. I'm not discounting it and saying that there's not value in those things, but you gotta have an opportunity for your own growth. Having ideas and opinions comes from engaging people's thoughts and ideas on things that have been reflected upon, also letting yourself expand in what it is that meaning can offer to you by learning certain things, right? Contentment is rooted in knowing. It's a big part of our tradition. Where are the mics? Okay, so we're gonna read through this. It's gonna take us about 15 minutes. You're gonna read one by one so that we're all reading together. You have the transcript. As the person is reading, listen to what it is that they're reading. Does that make sense? 15 minutes, be really easy. You can focus. Try not to look at anything else for 15 minutes, okay? Yeah? Who has the mic in their hand? Nobody, it's in an empty seat. Who wants to start reading first? David Foster Wallace is not Muslim. There might be a part in the speech where he says a bad word. If you don't want to say the bad word, which you shouldn't, unless you want to say it, and then if you want to say it, it's a little bit different of a thing that we have to talk about, you can just skip over it. I'm gonna put one mic back there, and we're gonna have one mic here, and let's just read it section by section. Read as much as you'd like, a few sentences, a paragraph, and then pass it on, and then we'll continue. Kevin, you want to take this? You're going to start, Halima? Yeah, go ahead.
Greetings, parents, and congratulations to Kenyon's graduating class of 2005. There are these 2 young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods at them and says, "Morning, boys. How's the water?" And the 2 young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, "What the is water?"
Oh, hell was not the word I was talking about. Just so we're on the same page. Yeah, sorry.
What the heck is water?
Yeah, there we go, yeah.
This is a standard requirement of U.S. commencement speeches, the deployment of didactic little parabolish stories. The story thing turns out to be one of the better, less bullshitty conventions of the genre. But if you're worried that I plan to present myself here as the wise, older fish explaining what water is to you, younger fish, please don't be. I'm not the wise old fish. The point of the fish story is merely that the most obvious, important realities are often the ones that are hardest to see and talk about. Stated as an English sentence, of course, this is just a banal platitude. But the fact is that in the day-to-day trenches of adult existence, banal platitudes can have a life or death importance. Or so I wish to suggest to you, on this dry and lovely morning.
Go ahead.
Of
Let's-
course, the main requirement of speeches like this is that I'm supposed to talk about your liberal arts education's meaning, to try to explain why the degree you are about to receive has actual human value instead of just a material payoff. So let's talk about the single most persuasive cliche in the commencement speech genre, which is that a liberal arts education is not so much about filling you up with knowledge as it is about teaching you how to think. If you are like me as a student, you've never liked hearing this, and you tend to feel a bit insulted by the claim that you needed anybody to teach you how to think. Since the fact that you even got admitted to a college this good seems like proof that you already know how to think. But I'm going to posit to you that the liberal arts cliche turns out not to be insulting at all, because the really significant education in thinking that we're supposed to get in a place like this isn't really about the capacity to think, but rather about the choice of what to think about. If your total freedom of choice regarding what to think about seems too obvious to waste time discussing, I'd ask you to think about fish and water, and to bracket for just a few minutes your skepticism about the value of the totally obvious.
Here's another didactic little story. There are these two guys sitting together in a bar in the remote Alaskan wilderness. One of the guys is religious, the other is an atheist, and the two are arguing about the existence of God with that special intensity that comes after about the fourth beer. And the atheist says, "Look, it's not like I don't have actual reasons for not believing in God. It's not like I haven't ever experimented with the whole God and prayer thing. Just last month, I got caught away from the camp in that terrible blizzard, and I was totally lost, and I couldn't see a thing, and it was 50 below, and so I tried it. I fell to my knees in the snow and cried out, 'Oh God, if there is a God, I'm lost in this blizzard, and I'm gonna die if you don't help me.' And now in the bar, the religious guy looks at the atheist all puzzled. 'Well then, you must believe now,' he says. 'After all, here you are, alive.' The atheist just rolls his eyes. 'No, man, all that was a couple Eskimos happened to come wandering by and showed me the way back to camp.'"
It's easy to run this story through kind of a standard liberal arts analysis. The exact same experience can mean two totally different things to two different people, given those people's two different belief templates and two different ways of constructing meaning from experience. Because we prize tolerance and diversity of belief, nowhere in our liberal arts analysis do we want to claim that one guy's interpretation is true and the other guy's is false or bad. Which is fine, except we also never end up talking about just where these individual templates and beliefs come from. Meaning where they come from inside the two guys. And if a person's most basic orientation towards the world and the meaning of his experience were somehow just hardwired, like height or shoe size, or automatically absorbed from the culture, like language. As if how we construct meaning were not actually a matter of personal intentional choice. Plus there's a whole matter of arrogance. The non-religious guy is so totally certain in his dismissal of the possibility that the passing the Eskimos had anything to do with his prayer for help. True, there are plenty of religious people who seem arrogant and certain of their own interpretations too. They're probably even more repulsive than the atheists, at least to most of us. But religious dogmatist problem is exactly the same as the story's unbeliever. Blind certainty, a closed-mindedness that amounts to an imprisonment so total that the prisoner doesn't even know he's locked up.
The point here is that I think this is one part of what teaching me how to think is really supposed to mean. Be just a little less arrogant, to have just a little critical awareness about myself and my certainties, because a huge percentage of the stuff that I tend to be automatically certain of is, it turns out, totally wrong and diluted. I've learned this the hard way, as I'm sure you graduates will too.
Here's just one example of the total wrongness of something I tend to be automatically sure of. Everything in my own immediate experience supports my deep belief that I am the absolute center of the universe. the realist, most vivid, and important person in existence. We rarely think about this sort of natural basic self-centeredness because it's so socially repulsive. But it's pretty much the same for all of us. It's our default setting, hardwired into our boards at birth. Think about it. There is no experience you have had that you are not absolutely the center of. The world as you experience it is there in sorry. The world as you experience it is there in front of you or behind you, to the left or the right of you, on your TV or your monitor, and so on. Other people's thoughts and feelings have to be communicated to you somehow, but your own are so immediate, urgent, real.
Please don't worry that I'm getting ready to lecture you about compassion or other directedness or all the so-called virtues. This is not a matter of virtue. It's a matter of my choosing to do the work of somehow altering or getting free of my natural hardwired default setting, which is to be deeply and literally self-centered and to see and interpret everything through the lens of self. People who can adjust their natural default setting this way are often described as being well adjusted, which I suggest to you is not an accidental term.
Given the triumphant academic setting here, an obvious question is how much of this work of adjusting our default setting involves actual knowledge or intellect. This question gets very tricky. Probably the most dangerous thing about an academic education, at least in my own case, is that it enables my tendency to over-intellectualize stuff, to get lost in abstract argument inside my head instead of simply paying attention to what is going on in front of me, right in front of me, paying attention to what is going on inside me.
As I'm sure you guys know by now, it is extremely difficult to stay alert and attentive. Instead of getting hypnotized by the constant monologue inside your own head, maybe happening right now, 20 years after my own graduation, I have come gradually to understand that the liberal arts cliche about teaching you how to think is actually shorthand for a much deeper, more serious idea. Learning how to think really means learning how to exercise some control over how and what you think. It means being conscious and aware enough to choose what you pay attention to and to choose how you construct meaning from experience. Because if you cannot exercise this kind of choice in adult life, you will be totally hosed. Think of the old cliche about the mind being an excellent servant, but a terrible master.
This, like many cliches, so lame and unexciting on the surface, actually expresses a great and terrible truth. It is not the least bit coincidental that adults who commit suicide with firearms almost always shoot themselves in the head. They shoot the terrible master. And the truth is that most of these suicides are actually dead long before they pull the trigger.
And I submit that this is what the real no value of your liberal arts education is supposed to be about. How to keep from going through your comfortable, prosperous, respectable adult life dead, unconscious, a slave to your head and to your natural default setting of being uniquely, completely, purely alone day in and day out. That may sound like hyperbole or abstract nonsense. Let's get concrete. The plain fact is that your graduating seniors do not yet have any clue what day in, day out really means. They happen to be whole, large parts of adult American life that nobody talks about in commencement speeches. One such part involves boredom, routine and petty frustration. The parents and older folks here will know all too well what I'm talking about.
By way of example, let's say it's an average adult day and you get up in the morning, go to your challenging white-collar college graduate job, and you work hard for 8 or 10 hours. At the end of the day, you're tired and somewhat stressed, and all you want to do is go home and have a good supper and maybe unwind for an hour, and then hit the sack early because, of course, you have to get up the next day and do it all again. But then you remember there's no food at home. You haven't had time to shop this week because of your challenging job, and so now after work, you have to get in your car and drive to the supermarket. It's the end of the workday, and the traffic is apt to be very bad. So getting to the store takes way longer than it should, and when you finally get there, the supermarket is very crowded because of course it's the time of day when all the other people with jobs also try to squeeze in some grocery shopping. And the store is hideously lit, and infused with the soul-killing music or corporate pop, and it's pretty much the last place you want to be. You can't just get in and quickly out. You have to wander all over the huge, overlit stores, confusing aisles to find stuff you want, and you have to maneuver your junky cart through all these other tired, hurried people with carts, etc., cutting stuff out because it's a long ceremony. And eventually you get all your supper supplies, except now it turns out there aren't enough checkout lines open, even though it's the end of the day rush. So the checkout line is incredibly long, which is stupid and infuriating. You can't take your frustration out on the frantic lady working at the register, who's overworked at a job, whose daily tedium and meaninglessness surpasses the imagination of any of us here at a prestigious college.
But anyway, you finally get to the checkout lines front, and you pay for your food, and you get told, have a nice day in a voice that is absolute voice of death. Then you have to take your creepy, flimsy plastic bags of groceries in your cart with the one crazy wheel that pulls maddeningly to the left all the way out through the crowded, bumpy, literary parking lot. And then you have to drive all the way home through slow, heavy, SUV-intensive rush hour traffic, etc., etc.
Everyone here has done this, of course, but it hasn't yet been part of your graduate's actual life routine, day after week, after month, after year. But it will be, and many more dreary, annoying, seemingly meaningless routines besides. But that is not the point. The point is that petty, frustrating crap like this is exactly where the work of choosing is going to come in, because the traffic jams and crowded aisles and long checkout lines give me time to think. And if I don't make a conscious decision about how to think and what to pay attention to, I'm going to be miserable every time I have to shop. Because my natural default setting is the certainty that situations like this are really all about me, about my hungriness and my fatigue and my desire to just get home. And it's going to seem for all the world like everybody else is just in my way. And who are all these people in my way? And look at how repulsive most of them are, and how stupid and cow-like and dead-eyed and non-human they seem in the checkout line, or at how annoying and rude it is that people are talking loudly on cell phones in the middle of the line. And look at how deeply and personally unfair this is.
Or, of course, if I'm in a more socially conscious liberal arts form of my default setting, I can spend time in the end-of-the-day traffic being disgusted about all the huge, stupid, lane-blocking SUVs and Hummers and V12 pickup trucks, burning their wasteful, selfish 40-gallon tanks of gas. And I can dwell on the fact that the patriotic or religious bumper stickers only seem to be on the biggest, most disgustingly selfish vehicles, driven by the ugliest, responding here to loud applause. This is an example of how not to think, though. Most disgustingly selfish vehicles, driven by the ugliest, most inconsiderate and aggressive drivers. And I can think about how our children's children will despise us for wasting all the future's fuel and probably screwing up the climate, and how spoiled and stupid and selfish and disgusting we all are, and how modern consumer society just sucks, and so forth and so on. You get it?
You got the idea. If I choose to think this way in the store and on the freeway, fine. Lots of us do. Except thinking this way tends to be so easy and automatic that it doesn't have to be a choice. It is my natural default setting. It's the automatic way that I experience the boring, frustrating, crowded parts of adult life when I'm operating on the automatic, unconscious belief that I'm the center of the world and that my immediate needs and feelings are what should determine the world's priorities.
The thing is that, of course, there are totally different ways to think about these kind of situations. In this traffic, all these vehicles stopped and idling in my way. It's not impossible that some of these people in SUVs have been in horrible auto accidents in the past, and now find driving so terrifying that their therapist has all but ordered them to get a huge, heavy SUV so they can feel safe enough to drive. Or that the Hummer that just cut me off is maybe being driven by a father whose little child is hurt or sick in the seat next to him. And he's trying to get this kid to the hospital, and he's in a bigger, more legitimate hurry than I am. It is actually I who am in his way.
Or I can choose to force myself to consider the likelihood that everyone else in the supermarket's checkout line is just as bored and frustrated as I am, and that some of these people probably have harder, more tedious and painful lives than I do.
Again, please don't think that I'm giving you moral advice. or that I'm saying you're supposed to think this way, or that anyone expects you to just automatically do it, because it's hard. It takes will and effort. And if you are like me, some days you won't be able to do it, or you just flat out won't want to.
But most days, if you are aware enough to give yourself a choice, you can choose to look differently at this fat, dead-eyed, over-made-up lady who just screamed at her kid in the checkout line. Maybe she's not usually like this. Maybe she's been up 3 straight nights holding the hand of a husband who is dying of bone cancer. Or maybe this very lady is a low-wage clerk at the motor vehicle department who just yesterday helped her spouse resolve a horrific, infuriating red tape problem through some small act of bureaucratic kindness. Of course, none of this is likely, but it's also not impossible. It just depends what you want to consider. If you're automatically sure that you know what reality is, and you are operating at your default setting, then you, like me, probably won't consider possibilities that aren't annoying and miserable. But if you really learn how to pay attention, then you will know that there are other options. It will actually be within your power to experience a crowded, hot, slow, consumer, hell type situation as not only meaningful but sacred, on fire with the same force that made the stars, love, fellowship, and mystical oneness of all things deep down.
Not that mystical stuff is necessarily true. The only thing that's capital T true is that you get to decide how you're going to try to spin. This, I submit, is the freedom of a real education, of learning how to be well adjusted. You get to consciously decide what has meaning and what doesn't. You get to decide what to worship.
Because here's something else that's weird but true. In the day-to-day trenches of adult life, there is actually no such thing as atheism. There is no such thing as not worshiping. Everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. And the compelling reason for maybe choosing some sort of God or spiritual type thing to worship, be it JC or Allah, be it YHWH or the Wiccan Mother Goddess or the Four Noble Truths or some inviolable set of ethical principles, is that pretty much anything else you worship will eat you alive. If you worship money and things, if they are where you tap real meaning in life, then you will never have enough, never feel you have enough. It's the truth. Worship your body and beauty and sexual allure and you will always feel ugly. And when time and age start showing, you will die a million deaths before they finally grieve you. On one level, we all know this stuff already. It's been codified as myths, proverbs, cliches, epigrams, parables, the skeleton of every great story. The whole trick is keeping the truth up front in daily consciousness.
Worship power. You'll end up feeling weak and afraid, and you will need ever more power over others to numb you and your own fear. Worship your intellect, being seen as smart. You will end up feeling stupid and flawed, always on the verge of being found out. But the insidious thing about these forms of worship is not that they're evil or sinful, it's that they are unconscious. They have default settings. They're the kind of worship you just gradually slip into, day after day, getting more and more selective about what you see and how you measure value without ever being fully aware that's what you're doing.
And the so-called real world will not discourage you from operating on your default settings, because the so-called real world of men and money and power comes merrily along in a pool of fear and anger and frustration and craving and worship itself. Our own present culture has harnessed these forces in ways that have yielded extraordinary wealth and comfort and personal freedom. The freedom all to be lords of our tiny skulled kingdoms, alone at the center of all creation. This kind of freedom has much to recommend it. But of course, there are all different kinds of freedom, and the kind that is most precious you will not hear talk about much in the great outside world of wanting and achieving. The really important kind of freedom involves attention and awareness and discipline, and being truly to care about other people and to sacrifice for them over and over in a myriad petty and sexy ways every day.
That is real freedom. That is being educated and understanding how to think. The alternative is unconsciousness, the default setting, the rat race, the constant gnawing sense of having had and lost some infinite thing. I know that this stuff probably doesn't sound fun and breezy or grandly inspirational the way a commencement speech is supposed to sound. What it is, as far as I can see, is the capital T truth, with a whole lot of rhetorical niceties stripped away. You are, of course, free to think of it whatever you wish, but please don't just dismiss it as just some figure-wagging Dr. Laura sermon. None of this stuff is really about morality or religion or dogma or big fancy questions of life after death.
The capital D truth is about life before death. It is about the real value of a real education, which has almost nothing to do with knowledge and everything to do with simple awareness. Awareness of what is so real and essential, so hidden in plain sight all around us, all the time, that we have to keep reminding ourselves over and over, this is water, this is water.
It is unimaginably hard to do this, to stay conscious and aware, conscious and alive in the adult world day in and day out, which means yet another grand cliche turns out to be true. Your education really is the job of a lifetime, and it commences now. I wish you learned more than that.
Great. So let's really quick for 3 minutes, turn to the persons next to us. What is the relevance of this to what we've been discussing this week, last week in terms of laghu? Let's talk about it for a couple of minutes and then we'll come back and go and talk more. Go ahead. And if there's other stuff that comes up from you hearing David Foster Wallace's talk, you can discuss that as well. What does it make you think about? But yeah, go ahead. Okay, what are we talking about? Who has the mic? mean, other than the one that I have. You have something to say? No. Maybe we can hear from a few people. What are we talking about? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. So I was thinking a lot about when the last time it was that I had an original thought, which sounds hilarious, but if you're saying that 90% are your thoughts on repeat, and that 4% of them are just like anger or resentment or like an infinite loop, and I'm thinking about
4% are conscious.
4%
96% are repeat.
Oh, 96. Oh, that's
Yeah.
even worse.
Yeah, but meaning you use your conscious mode and presence like very diminished, like really minuscule. Do you know?
Yeah, that's not good. But I'm thinking a lot about like how your TikTok For You page and your Instagram page tells you exactly what your infinite loop is already saying to you, and how negative it could be and how harmful it can be. And then I was thinking about what you said about khushu last week. Like, what do you think about when you pray? And so when I was praying this week, I'm like, oh, I'm thinking about these TikTok videos that I'm watching. I'm thinking about like these Instagram or these pranks or these things that I see, and it's making me think, when was the last time I challenged everything that I've heard? I really just like thought for myself. And I also have been thinking about the people in my life, right? Like, you're a collection of the 3 people around you. And I'm thinking about the 3 people around me and how they make me perceive myself and how it can be harmful to me. And I'm thinking, like, maybe this is a matter of solitude. Maybe you need to distance yourself to really think about who you want to become.
And how does it relate to David Foster Wallace?
Well, I think I need to ask myself, how's the water? And remember, I'm in water, because I think a lot of it is just, like, not questioning where you are, not questioning what's going on around you, or questioning in a way where you're taught to question it. Maybe it's time to think about something else.
Yeah, but they're 2 different things, right? Questioning something, we become subservient to language. And I'm not saying you're doing this, but if I'm questioning, I already feel like I'm coming with a motivation that has some element of aggressiveness to it. When I'm thinking about something, right? The fish don't even know that they're in the water. They're immersed in it and they have no conscious awareness. And every other sentence that you said, now I'm thinking about the people I spend time with. Now I'm thinking about the things that I watch and I consume. Now I'm thinking about this. Allah gave you capacity as a human to be human. And sometimes all you got to do is take a pause and think about, what is this? And what David Foster Wallace is saying is that when you're so immersed in it, you're not even aware that you're stuck in it. This is water. This is water. This is what Allah is saying to us. This is lahu. This is lahu. And if I can get myself to just tap into the conscious mode, even at a 4% level, inventory at the end of it. That's why class number 1, muraqabah, muhasabah. You're not just delving into religion as a source of entertainment. You have to make it something that is about information that educates, and then actually do the things. What you are calling thinking is what is muhasabah. That's inventorying. I'm looking at the day I lived. Why am I watching this stuff? And then I have words that are more than just the 5 feelings I tell myself: happy, sad, angry. I'm not limited by vocabulary because I actually read and I expand, and then I can understand the meanings of things through the names of things. This is lahu. This is lahu. Nobody finds peace by chasing distraction. If you don't name it, it doesn't mean that that's not what it is. The sun is beautiful whether you watch it rise or not, right? It doesn't need you to see it in order for it to be beautiful, but don't you get a lot from looking at the sunrise? What else did we talk about? You pass it back.
I think what came to mind for me was I feel like for a lot of people, like one of the defining moments of when I thought, oh, this is water, is like after October 7th, like with Gaza. And I feel like being Muslim here, like I think seeing that, it just made you realize this is water even more, even within our Muslim communities. Because I think being Muslim here, you have to fight for your Islam in a way where our deen does encourage us to be like, okay, this is water, this is water. But then sometimes you can get comfortable with that. And Gaza forced like I guess for me personally, like, oh yeah, wow, it's the norm for even Muslims to spend like $30,000 on weddings or more while people are sleeping in tents, and like, oh, this is water. Like this is an expectation you're seeing on Instagram, on TikTok, whatever else. Or what the job I do, which makes me income to help my family, but maybe I need to start questioning the morality of what I'm doing, or the 2 grains of rice that I left on my tray that maybe I never thought of are now, you're just realizing this is water to a complete different extent. So I feel like that's what came up for me, yeah.
Yeah, and I want you to think about it again, right? Language is important. For an individual, you can have an awakening. But what Shaitan wants to do in our steps is still attach an element that takes us steps back as we feel like we're moving forward. What are you waking up to when you are able to identify something as lahu? Start prefacing the decisions and the choices one with a pause. Everything doesn't have to be spontaneous, man. It doesn't always have to be instantaneous, instinctive, and reactive. And then just be bold enough to ask the question, is there beauty in what it is that I'm about to do? Is there beauty in what it is that I'm about to interject in the world? And you can't have like a formulaic understanding that just makes things absolute. Sometimes the most beautiful thing is to raise your voice in a place of justifiable anger against inequity. The Prophet got angry when people were racist and abusive and oppressive. It's in the hadith. Why are you not angry by the things that got the Prophet angry, alayhi salam? Why get angry by other stuff? Is there beauty in what it is that's about to come from me? Is there beauty in this thing that I'm being drawn towards? Is this lahu? It's got no point to it. Don't be scared to name it for what it is. When people wake up, Allah is Jabbar. He shakes us sometimes to get us to understand what is real and what is delusional. If I can sit and really think about privilege and entitlement, I'm choosing or believe that I have chosen to not pray Dhuhr today. What is my vantage point at that moment of the world and its existence? Do I even really know what it means to pray? In comparison to people, when they have nothing, they drink melted snow. It's not about unhealthy guilt, it's about reality. And what gets in the way before anything else? Distraction, man. Distraction. Stop chasing distraction. What is it going to do for you? It's going to distract you. And what is it distracting you from? It's not just about the acquisition of wealth or how much you spend or food when others don't have. Where is Allah in your decisions? من كان يؤمن بالله وباليوم الآخر فليقل خيرا أو ليصمت. That habituated understanding of a belief in Allah in the last day, you speak good or be silent. The default is silence, and in silence there is stillness, and in stillness there is clarity, and clarity just breeds more stillness. Comparison breeds chaos. The hadith that I'm going to put in the WhatsApp group that we've talked about in different like gatherings as well, is important to understand here before we stop and make dua. The Prophet ﷺ, he tells us very distinctly that many people will use as a foundational narration in our tradition when it comes to character and cultivating good character, that the beauty of one's Islam is to leave behind that which does not conserve them. Tarak is an actual abandonment of something. So when it says min husn al-Islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'nihi, that the beauty of one's Islam is leaving behind that which does not concern them, you are leaving it in the most literal of sense. Just let it go. Let go of the distractions. This is water, this is water, this is water. I live immersed in something for my entire existence to a point where I'm not even conscious of it. I took some of you to Jordan to meet Palestinian refugees some months ago. There was a brother who was part of the relief organization from Jordan who was 30 plus years of age. And he said he lived 15 minutes from a multi-generational refugee camp that has men and women who witnessed the Nakba. He said, I grew up my whole life. I didn't know that this thing was 15 minutes away from my house. This is water. They want you to be distracted. They want you to think because you don't see it in front of you, it doesn't exist. Racism is everywhere. Anti-Blackness is the root of every institution. Its longevity comes not simply from those who perpetrate, but those who are unwilling to let go of the benefits that inequitous systems afford them. This is water. This is water. This is water. Get out of the conversations that have you stuck in a place that makes you in an unhealthy mode compare yourself. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Allah made you in the most beautiful of forms. Stop being afraid to recognize your light and then go and share it with the world. And step number 1 cannot be separated from step number 2. الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. The khushu' starts in the prayer. You want to be serious about it? Get all 5 down. If you got to work towards it, work towards it. The ajr is in the struggle. Just try your best. It's hard to do 1 before you do 2. You got to do them before you get to all 5. And once you get it, inshallah, you taste the sweetness of it. Nobody finds peace by chasing distraction. All of these put so many conditions on acceptability of you. You have to leave your Islam at the door. Our Prophet teaches us of a woman who is a known prostitute who's given Jannah from acts of rahmah. That's who your God is. Who are you scared to stand in front of? Leave behind the stuff that doesn't concern you. It's not your business. And go towards the things that are concerning to you. Your heart should be important to you. Your wellness should be important to you. The state of your inside should be important to you. Start inward and work outward. And then understand you don't have to do it alone. I didn't know how it was going to go when we all read this article together. I thought that went pretty well. Good for you all, mashallah. That could have been really terrible. But it seemed like people were actually paying attention. And everybody reads really well too, mashallah. Understand that we can grow together as a community. It doesn't mean that everybody has to be in a place where we're exactly the same. The beauty is that Allah has made us all different from one another, and we can still have a care, affection, and compassion. And the world out there tells you that you have to compare constantly. Come in here, and you come as you are, and you allow for yourself to connect to the divine. Okay. Maghrib is going to come in a few minutes. If anybody's fasting, there's some dates up here. You can pass these around. People want. I have some water, so can you guys pass this around? I think at 8:03 or 8:04. Let's make dua really quick before we wrap up, inshallah, and then we'll stand. We're not going to meet on Wednesday this week, but we will meet next Monday and Wednesday, inshallah. اللهم آمين. اللهم لك الحمد كما ينبغي لوجهك وعظيم سلطانك. لك الحمد حمدا طاهرا طيبا مباركا فيه إلى يوم الدين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وفي الآخرين. اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. اللهم اجعلنا من المخلصين. We begin this supplication in your name, Ya Allah, and beseech you to send your choicest salutations upon your most beloved, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam. We turn to you, Ya Rabbi, as the sun sets upon another day. Ya Arhamar Rahimeen, most merciful of those who show mercy. Make us those who always feel the presence of your Rahmah. You begin, Ya Rab, with a description of the successful believer in these verses of Quran that we are looking at. Not with wealth, not with status, not with influence, not with power, but with presence. A heart that is present with you, a soul that remembers you, a servant who stills the noise of the world long enough to hear your call above everything else. And how desperately, Ya Allah, we need that today. We live in an age of distraction, an age where our attention is constantly being pulled apart, where silence feels uncomfortable, where stillness feels unfamiliar, where we can spend hours consuming the lives of others while remaining strangers to our own hearts and souls. Ya Rabbi, our minds are crowded, our hearts are exhausted, our souls are overstimulated but undernourished. We wake up reaching for devices before we reach for remembrance. We absorb endless words from creation while neglecting the words of the Creator. We know what is trending in the world, but we struggle to know what is happening inside our own hearts. And somewhere along the way, we became distracted from you. Not always through major sins, not always through rebellion, but through heedlessness, through constant noise, through endless scrolling, through lives lived too quickly to reflect, through hearts that became attached to everything temporary while forgetting the one who is eternal. Ya Allah, forgive us for the moments when our bodies stood in prayer but our hearts stood somewhere else. Forgive us the prayers we rushed through as though meeting with you was an interruption instead of the greatest honor of our existence. Forgive us for allowing dunya to occupy spaces in our hearts that belonged only to you. Ya Rabbi, you tell us that success belongs to those who possess khushu' in their prayer. Not perfection, not performance, presence. A prayer where the heart arrives before the tongue speaks. A prayer where tears are not forced but born from sincerity. A prayer where we stop pretending we are self-sufficient and finally stand before you in honesty. Teach us that kind of prayer, Ya Allah. Teach us how to stand before you with awe instead of routine, with longing instead of distraction, with surrender instead of haste. Let prayer become for us what it was for the righteous before us, a refuge, a return, a conversation, a place where broken hearts become whole again. Ya Allah, there are distractions all around us, but there are also distractions within us. The distraction of ego, the distraction of comparison, the distraction of pride, the distraction of envy, the distraction of constantly needing validation from people while forgetting that acceptance from you is enough. Cleanse our hearts from every attachment that distances us from remembrance, because some distractions are obvious, but others wear beautiful disguises. Sometimes we distract ourselves with productivity so we never have to confront our emptiness. Sometimes we distract ourselves with entertainment because silence would force us to face our pain. Sometimes we distract ourselves with people because we fear being alone with ourselves. Ya Allah, allow us to realize that every distraction pulling us away from you eventually pulls us away from ourselves as well. You created us to live with purpose, not to drown in endless consumption, not to live numb, not to exist in constant reaction to notifications, expectations, and pressures. You created us for remembrance, for meaning, for worship, for presence. Ya Rabbi, there are people amongst us who have not felt peace in a very long time. People whose hearts are anxious even in moments of rest. People who cannot focus because they are carrying invisible burdens. People whose minds race through fears about tomorrow while grieving wounds from yesterday. Bring stillness to their hearts and ours, Ya Allah. Let them discover that khushu is not only about lowering the gaze in prayer, but about anchoring the soul in you. Because when the heart is attached to dunya, everything feels unstable. But when the heart is attached to you, even storms can become bearable. Ya Allah, make us people who turn away from lahu, from vain speech, empty pursuits, and distractions that waste our lives. Not because we believe we are better than others, but because we know our hearts are fragile. And whatever repetitively enters the heart eventually shapes it. If we constantly consume anger, we become angry. If we constantly consume envy, we become dissatisfied. If we constantly consume distraction, we lose the ability to be present. But if we fill our hearts with remembrance, with Quran, with sincerity, with gratitude, with worship, with reflection, then even in a chaotic world, our souls can remain anchored. Ya Allah, teach us the discipline of turning away. Turning away from what weakens the soul, turning away from conversations that darken the heart, turning away from distractions that slowly steal our time, our focus, our peace, and our purpose. Because every moment we spend alive is a moment we can never get back. And one day, all the distractions that consumed us will disappear. The notifications will stop, the trends will fade, the applause of people will mean nothing. And all that will remain is what we carry to you. So make us mindful of our time, Ya Rabbi, mindful of our attention, mindful of our hearts. Let us not arrive before you having spent our entire lives distracted from the very purpose for which we were created. Ya Allah, make Quran beloved to us again. Make prayer beloved to us again. Make remembrance beloved to us again. Allow us to taste the sweetness of being fully present with you, a presence so deep that it quiets our anxieties, a remembrance so sincere that it softens our hearts, a connection so real that the distractions of dunya begin to lose their grip on us. And if our hearts wander, bring them back gently again and again and again. Ya Rahman, there are hearts listening to this prayer that are overwhelmed by the world, hearts tired of pretending to be strong, hearts drowning in distraction because they are afraid of their own pain, hearts searching for meaning in places that can never truly satisfy them. Draw them and us back to you beautifully, not through fear alone, but through love, through mercy, through the realization that no distraction in this world could ever compare to the peace found in nearness to you. Ya Allah, make us from amongst the successful believers, those whose prayers transform them, those whose hearts remain awake, those who know when to turn away from distraction so they can turn fully towards you. Anchor our hearts in what is eternal. Protect us from wasting our lives chasing what will never last. And allow us to meet you one day with hearts that were not perfect, but hearts that kept returning to you no matter how distracted they became. For a moment now, just turn within yourself. Make your own dua. Allow for yourself to take benefit from the sakina that the hadith tells us these gatherings of Quran in Allah's house blanket and envelop all of us within. Be bold enough to think about what it is that really captivates the attention of your inner self. And how is it that you will let go of it? And who is it that you will let help you to let go of it? That there is no achievement in having to do it all alone. Make dua for your loved ones, those who have sacrificed and struggled for you. And most importantly, make dua for yourself. But in this moment, just utter whatever prayers your heart is yearning for you to make. And then we'll end our collective dua together and we'll stand for Maghrib, inshallah. Ya Allah, accept our dua. Ya Allah, accept our dua. Ya Allah, accept our dua. Ya Allah, by the barakah of this gathering, accept our dua. Ya Allah, by the presence of the righteous that are here, accept our dua. Ya Allah, by the sincerity of the most sincere that are here, accept our dua. Make us always the reason people have hope in this world, and never the reason people might dread it. Make us those who make decisions through our hearts and never at their expense. Those who watch over their hearts, so that in turn our hearts may watch over us. Protect us always from hearts that are not humble, tongues that are not wise, and eyes that have forgotten how to cry. Forgive us for our shortcomings and guide and bless us all. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا مولانا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وآله وصحبه أجمعين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. Barakallahu fikum. People want to just put their chairs against the wall and we'll call the adhan and make maghrib inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Oh